So I'll start with like macro. I think I'll try and give a broad overview, and then yeah, I think then we can kind of go down and also talk a little bit about maybe there's a lot of hype, I think, in tokenization space, but tokenizing real estate, you're dealing with the most conservative people in the world, right? So, it's a slow, it doesn't disrupt the way that and the speed that people think it will disrupt. It actually takes quite a bit of time. So
Yeah, you bring up a good point because they don't want to take as many risks.
I've been developing tech stacks related to prop tech for like 10, 12 years. So I deal with real estate developers specifically and people who are investing in real estate. And it's an incredibly conservative, mindset for people who are holding these asset classes, right? So and we were just kind of highlighting on funds and fund managers and as much as we say that tokenization is going to disrupt, and I read these reports where they're projecting something along the lines of $16 trillion or $15 trillion. Regardless, it's trillions, not billions, and that's over a period of maybe 5-7 years, something like this. So I think the disruption will happen. But what I've seen in prop tech and with anything related to disrupting the asset is it does happen, but at a slower pace than projections occur. So you look at, specifically, let's take, for example, the online classifieds businesses. You could look at the agency business, which was completely disrupted by, all of the main travel websites. People don't use travel agents as much anymore, right? You look at jobs classifieds, right? So you look at, people, particularly when they want to find a job, they'll just go online. They'll look at the ad classified listings. Car classified websites. That when people want to buy a car now, they go online, they look at the listings, they go to car websites. And that's kind of the traditional models that have disrupted quite fast. But then you look at, property portal industries that are trying to disrupt the asset class, and they're trying to do it in such a way to streamline the transaction, right? Because real estate in general it's a huge consideration for people to acquire a property, specifically if they're looking to acquire a property a few $100,000. They're looking to take out loans, they're looking to talk with family members, and so it's usually a multi-month process, and rightfully so, right? So but now I think with the advent of tokenization, the ability to transparently own an underlying asset class at a fraction of the actual total property value, the consideration and the barrier to entry all of a sudden becomes a lot lower. And the inherent ability to provide liquidity to that asset because of the lower barrier to entry also creates a new value proposition, which is potentially, we're in the crypto space where we've seen bull market, bear markets. A great place to store value would be through, essentially asset-backed tokens, right? Whether it's real estate or whether it's bonds or equities or something, but real estate really just has that stability in price. I can see even over the last few years, you've got markets like the United States where, property prices continue to rise. And so when you have a token representing the underlying physical asset, and the physical asset particularly is real estate, then you're generally offsetting a few aspects. One is anything to do with inflation, and really anything to do with like risk. So it becomes this part of your portfolio which is considered to be less risky, right? Specifically in the crypto space. And then you could say from a fund manager, or from a real estate tycoon, maybe tokenization would be the more riskier side of their portfolio, right? So it's kind of this blend in the middle of merging both the the cryptocurrency blockchain communities, as well as with traditional real estate investing. And so I think that's probably the most exciting part out there. And tokenization, it can be applied to anything. You and I, we were on a call yesterday, and really interesting. I mean, people are now looking to tokenize businesses. They're looking to tokenize franchise models. And so these all play a part just due to the benefits that tokenization has, which is the lower barrier to entry, the enhanced liquidity, transparency also through the underlying blockchain infrastructure, and the ability to transfer, tokens, right? So I think that over the next maybe 5-10 years, this is going to become a mainstream. Not only, and it's already picking up steam in Europe, it's already picking up steam in the United States, definitely, right? So we've seen probably really since 2017, quite a few really awesome platforms, people who I know, who are developing these platforms, who are, doing a really great job. And so now you can even see, as we were, discussing before as well, like fund managers and REITs who are all now looking, specifically public or private REITs are looking at the benefits of tokenization. And it really comes down to the redundancy of back-end office operations, enhanced transparency, due to the transferability of that underlying asset. And so I see it as, it's technology impacting really, the world's largest asset class when you look at specifically towards real estate. But as we kind of mentioned before, it's a conservative asset class, right? So this disruption, as we look into these large projections over the next 5-10 years, yeah, it will come, but it will come at just a slower pace. And so that's kind of, what I see the industry, but yet we're talking huge amounts of value, right? So, which is great to see.
So when you look at the middle class or even middle upper class in the United States, you mentioned REITs. So what is the advantage of having a tokenized asset, which is fractionalized, versus investing in REITs?
Yeah. So, I mean, REITs are usually like a pool of assets that have, a statistically average return, right? So I myself have participated in multiple, private REITs. And the difference between I guess, the value proposition and why it's attractive is you're more narrowing down onto maybe a specific asset, right? So now, rather than being within a pool of assets and having those returns, you can be now, targeting specific areas. So you look at, hey, if there's a shopping mall in a city in the Midwest and it's doing really well, or if there's an office building that has great tenants, and the purpose is to tokenize that underlying asset, just due to the attractive yields. Now we're seeing platforms definitely emerge in the United States and also in Europe that are now, acquiring assets, tokenizing them, dealing with both accredited investors as well as some retail investors. And so I think it's kind of, let's say, narrowing it down on the actual specific offering. Real estate is it varies. Whether you're dealing with, let's say, single family homes, multifamily homes, commercial assets, hotels, resorts. And so when you can really, hone down the focus of tokenizing one specific asset in one specific geographical location, and the reason for doing so might be because that area is growing, right? Maybe property prices are appreciating at a higher rate than the national average, right? So, and this hasn't really been, hasn't been on offer to participants unless you were, a fund manager and had the ability to buy the overall asset and pay $15-20 million and acquire that asset. But now, at a much lower level barrier to entry, now those best performing assets, people can now begin to significantly enter into. And so I see that as probably one of the biggest benefits over the next 5 to 10 years is and I think it's hard for people to, it's kind of hard to break out of the $250,000 net wealth range. It's harder, it's hard to break out of the net wealth range of $1 million. And a lot of this access to these best asset classes are generally reserved for people who are wealthy. And so now breaking down that barrier enables people who maybe have $15,000-$20,000 to yet invest in maybe this higher yielding asset class, but yet still have the liquidity options to divest, right, without huge significant deductions or loss of any yield or penalties, right? So tokenization kind of provides, that, let's call it the secondary market liquidity. So if someone wants to, invest in 10 assets and slowly divest from those assets over a period of time, they can do so at a fraction of each asset, and without, completely disrupting their portfolio. So how do I see it rolling out? I think there's a few barriers which are quite, considerable. One is, when you look at the United States, there's no lack of, buyers, right? So there kind of has to be an inherent need, right? So, properties, it's a seller's market, right? So people can get higher prices. Usually they'll list the property for a few weeks, it'll sell out. They have sophisticated agents, they have the whole network in order to transfer that property. So where does tokenization really come into play? Sellers need that liquidity. That's one. It's going to be where maybe it's not a seller's market, maybe it's a buyer's market, right? So then through tokenization of that asset, then they are able to get liquidity, right? So could be someone who, has an office building and they just want to tokenize 10% of it. They're going to use those funds in order to acquire another property. They can do that through a tokenization module, and they can do that with multiple white label platforms that are now established throughout the world, some of which are very good. And so I can kind of see this. It's just a different way of looking at, real estate investing. And so I think nothing really disrupts for particularly, first time home buyers. I think that market is largely, it's a different concept. But for investing in property for the predominant purpose of, let's say, asset appreciation as well as yield distributed through the form of rents, I think that asset class specifically from an investment perspective is the one that will be most heavily disrupted over the next 5 to 10 years through tokenization. And like Europe as well. So, I see these, it's more for, I could say, like, I think tokenization will leapfrog a little bit in markets that are emerging. And so myself specifically located here in Thailand, it's a hotbed for real estate development. It's a hotbed for real estate investment. And developers, they continuously want to build more projects. And so if they can find liquidity through tokenization, through fractional ownership, and continue to build more, it's also just inherently good for the economy in general, right? So I see that as maybe in markets like Europe and in markets like the United States, it'll definitely catch on. But I think what I can see is in throughout the world, it'll be emerging markets that will probably most see the benefits of tokenization. And kind of like other trends that happen in Europe and happen in the United States, when they become implemented in more emerging and developing economies, they take on a little bit of a different form, and then they traditionally like try and leapfrog or really implement. And so this has happened throughout the history of the online penetration through Web 2, and so I can definitely see this definitely becoming a trend in Web 3. So.
Have you considered the implications of BlackRock getting into the space, and whether it would be a good thing for the industry or not so good? Because in general, in terms of them getting into cryptocurrency, I hear both sides of it. So, but specifically in regards to tokenization of real estate, what kind of implications are you seeing?
I think it's great. I think that that level of tokenization through large institutional players will definitely, for us particularly, I mean, it's a selling point, right? So how does it really become implemented? I think real estate is one aspect, but I think it's more the tokenization of equities is where, BlackRock and bonds and T-bills and everything, so on and so forth. But I think that um, I, I think, yeah, I think it just leads to mass adoption, right? So, in a few years, the underlying word blockchain, the underlying word tokenization maybe isn't sexy anymore. It's just kind of considered the norms, right? So when people want to invest in property, maybe they don't look to buy a second home. They just look to invest in a platform where they feel comfortable with, that they're secure with, that has properties that are of their choosing. And that's their investment vehicle. And so I think large funds definitely tap into this play. And I think it's good, inherently good for the industry moving forward. And so I can see specifically they're going to be looking at, the commercial real estate sector, right? If they were, right? So and probably like through smaller funds, more so also a little bit of residential, but really it would be the commercial real estate sector. So there's a few problems with, these large asset classes, as well as these funds that hold maybe if 70% of their portfolio is in real estate and commercial real estate. There's a few problems. One is, funds traditionally value or appraise a third of their portfolio on an annual basis, and that's how they have that, rolling estimates, right? So when you increase the ability to do transactions specifically through a tokenization module, you're providing another level of data to that underlying asset. So that data is probably what's most valuable, right? So comparative to assessing the value of an office building every 3 years, you're now able to assess the value of that underlying asset and realize it almost on a day-to-day basis, right? Through the interaction of hundreds or thousands of transactions happening every 24 hours. And if those can be realized, and there's a few great platforms out there that are really tackling this. NVM is definitely one of them, and their whole aspect is really to provide real time, you could say, data that's correlated through the entire asset that gives an updated value. And I think that's very, very, very attractive. I also think that having those assets become, more tangibly and realistically valued based on, market conditions, it also adds for a bit more stability comparative to, this quarter's report, they valued a third of their fund, and all of a sudden, they're going to drop 20-30%, right? So this ability to utilize data through hundreds of transactions in a single asset over a week or a day is going to be inherently good for the underlying asset and in the industry in general. So I think that's probably one of the most exciting points, and not one of the points that we actually get to talk about a lot. Usually it comes down to, when people talk about tokenization, they want to look at the underlying asset, they want to look at barrier to entry, they want to look at yield, those type of things. And but the underlying data and the correlation of that data in a real time basis is very valuable. So now you can pass that on to then all of the commercial entities out there, the CBREs, the Colliers, right? So they spend sometimes weeks, appraising office buildings, And now if those firms, those top 20 Libsy report commercial entities, if they can now have a dashboard where they can get access to this information in a real-time method, then they're able to output appraisal processes much more effectively and efficiently. And so I think that's probably one of the most exciting parts and one of the biggest benefits to tokenizing real world assets. And that could be really anything. Real estate is definitely one of the ones that's most impacted.
Transitioning to PropBase, which is a platform that you created, what exactly does it solve?
Yeah, so I mean, our platform is, I guess, a little bit about myself. So I've been building tech-based platforms in Southeast Asia for the last 10 years, predominantly Thailand and in mainland Southeast Asia, and have scaled up those platforms quite a bit to having between 200 to 400 full-time staff, large technical teams, large operational teams, marketing teams, everything, which is quite exciting. And one of the aspects in building those platforms was how can we transact property and do it almost entirely online. And so in doing so, we were able to bring, a lot of transparency to the process. We were able to streamline all the intermediaries in the process, whether it be home loan officers working through our SaaS-based systems, title escrow agents, everyone kind of coming together on a platform in order to streamline the way people transact property. Now, in the United States and in Europe, I would say it's quite efficient. You can transact a property in maybe 7 to 10 days. But in emerging economies, you still have, I guess you could say, a few weeks, even on average. And so we always looked at how can we do it faster? How can we do it more efficiently? And a lot of the people a lot of our users who would come onto the site, register and stuff, we looked at really why were they inquiring about that property, and really came down to it that about half were inquiring for investment opportunities, right? So as specifically, this could be unique to Thailand. You have a growing middle class, you have access to third-party financing, you have a growing economy, you have kind of a booming hospitality industry as well. So myself and our leadership team came together and really honed in on how we could solve the pain points facing the real estate investment industry today, and specifically to our market. And our platform is designed to provide end-to-end solutions for real estate developers in tokenizing their assets, and do so in a secure and compliant manner. And largely, we're focusing on commercial assets in the hospitality sector, so namely resorts and hotels. Yeah, we're quite excited about it. So, why do we focus in this specific sector? Is I guess one, I don't want to have to be managing all these properties. So having a hotel brand, in our case, the international hotel brand, Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, is kind of the solution. So we looked at larger asset classes as being the most attractive. So Thailand specifically is growing in terms of tourism. The Ministry of Thailand Tourism entity here just projected that they were going to double in total tourists over the next 5 years. And so we really looked at what was going to be the most exciting asset class, what was the one that didn't necessarily have liabilities associated with it. And that's where we really came down to focusing on newer developments in this sector. And so we're quite excited about it. We're tokenizing our first assets within this year. And we're going for a full platform launch here in a few months. But our team, not only our leadership team, we all have the backgrounds that are relevant specifically to solving this problem. And so whether it be myself building prop tech stacks, or another person in our leadership team, dealing more on the finance side, or Jesse Gage handling a lot of the marketing solutions, building marketing-based platforms. And then what sits below us is quite a strong technical team, right? So we kind of identified, 3 areas. One is really, even before we wanted to build a sophisticated platform like PropBase, we first looked at, can we do this in a compliant and secure manner, right? So we started really down the road of late 2022 at taking, making sure that from a compliance perspective, we can secure all the licenses, we can do what we want to do in terms of the primary offering as well as the secondary market liquidity solutions. And the answer was yes, right? So Thailand in Southeast Asia in general is quite progressive in terms of its regulatory framework. So this is, quite encouraging for us. So when we developed our first prototype, which is kind of on our website today, is a more crystallized solution of what we're building. And so this really provides, I could say, all the pain points that face the real estate investment decision today, specific for assets located in our region. And that is high barrier to entry, diversification, liquidity on the secondary market side. And our whole objective really is, how can we, have a successful first tokenization of our asset? So we've developed our first module, which is the initial offering, or the crowdfunding tokenization module. And then our kind of longer term, and what we're most excited about is, those investors, how can we get those investors back out and at a time and price of their choosing, right? So, because once we do, we know that, the word of mouth, the network effect. So when a user or an investor has a great experience, what do? Well, you tell 10 of your friends, you try and get 5 of your friends to join, you look at the next offering, you want to participate in that offering, right? You feel comfortable. And so that's what our mission is. And so our model is not really for, we're not like a traditional Web3 model where we're not building a game and then we launch the game and then that's it. Our plan is really to how we can become the largest real estate tokenization platform in Southeast Asia. And how can we provide that whole model from, initial tokenization process, and how can we provide that solution for real estate developers looking for liquidity in their very good assets, right? So I think, our reception has been astounding so far. I mean, we've came a long way. We get lots of feedback. We're building our advisory board. We've got lots of inquiries, definitely from not only larger names, but also, we have strong angel team as well, who really believe that, they've known us for 5-10 years, and they've kind of seen what we built in the past. And so they know that we're now kind of driven with this laser focus on solving what we consider to be the greatest problem facing specifically this asset class today. And so that's what makes us passionate, and I guess that's what makes it quite fun, right? So we love to work hard, and sometimes we go 16 hours a day, and so we're kind of a tight knit team, and we've got great marketing team as well. So we're always there, specifically in our community channels, and I think that's how it should be, right? I think that's kind of what makes it fun and rewarding, and we're having a great time so far, and so we're also kind of in this earlier stage. So as we kind of get into 2024, that's when we need to scale up, continue to increase the size of our team. That's also when we'll be going through equity financing round. So.
So you mentioned that it's still fairly early. Where exactly are you in the process? Is this a working platform? Can people, at least outside the United States, be able to log in and use it? Where exactly is it?
Yeah, great question. So we have a working demo, a prototype of what we call it. We did our beta testing with about 70 participants. And so we were able to gather we did an earlier MVP build way early this year. And we're about 90 days away from full platform launch, between 90 and 120. So we've built up a very sophisticated platform, which is very secure. And so we're quite excited about it. In terms of our first asset offering, so we've already secured our first asset to be tokenized on the platform. As mentioned, it's a hotel managed by Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, which is going to be great. And and so that will kind of keep us busy for probably the best part of Q1 of 2024. So we're really, also in terms of users, right? People who've not only signed up to participate in the platform, we also, have launched in terms of how we're building out the strategy is a native utility token. And so this native utility token called Props is kind of designed at the core of all of our modules that we built going forward. So it serves as a uniform method for all smart contract interaction. It serves as a form for membership access to all fees paid on the platform, paid in Props. And in order for us to really build up community, we go through, the issuance of this token, which is, designed to power the entire PropBase ecosystem. And so we went through a very successful, what we call IDO or public sale for what we call round one. So that came off the bat. So that was very successful. We sold out just a few hours into our general distribution round. And we'll be going through round two here in about 2 weeks. And so that's kind of our next core focus. Then specifically for our platform launch, this is slated for Q4 of 2023. And our native utility token has, plans for DEX and SEX listing here around that time as well. And so it's kind of all highlighted on our website. One of the things that we really set out to do in the conversations that I had with our leadership team is we're in the Web3 space. We're developing a native utility token. We're building a community around it. We really wanted to have kind of an unprecedented level of transparency. So that's kind of our core values, right? So everything we do, from our tokenomics to our documentation to our white paper, we've laid it all out in a I think a very well written white paper that's takes like 60 minutes to read or something, but we try and break it down so someone can grab it in 5-10 minutes by developing a light paper. So if someone comes in and they're new to the platform, they can come in, they can see what types of properties we're going to tokenize. They can get involved in our community channels. We've got a great moderation team. They've all been with us since the start as well. And so kind of, anyone can really come if they're interested in what we're doing, if they're interested in our value proposition, and they see, hey, look, these guys, might be onto something here, right? So, we're building in a region that is, 650 million people, right? So it has the highest crypto adoption of anywhere in the world, right? So you've got, Vietnam, it's got 20% of the entire population has either owned, held, or in some way interacted with cryptocurrency. You've got Thailand, which is around 13%. You've got Singapore, 13%. So this is, 3 to 4 times higher than the global average, which would be maybe 3.5%, however you want to calculate it. And in addition to that, you just have a huge demand for real estate investment. So we're kind of at this pinnacle where you have a massive population, you have a high adoption of cryptocurrency and blockchain, enthusiasts, you could say, or people who have interacted with it. And then you just have this, very, very interesting, aspect into real estate investment. So, I've lived in Southeast Asia all of my professional career. Everybody, maybe unlike the United States or Europe, the first thing they want to do is, buy a property, right? Or invest in property in some way. So what we're doing is we're we're kind of marrying all these concepts together, bringing it on one app, making it to where you can do it securely and safely directly from your smartphone. And so, but with that, we are, making sure that everything we do is compliant within the legal and regulatory framework. So if you want to sign up to our platform, you got to go through KYC, you got to whitelist your wallet. We have the benefits of blockchain technology, such as transferability of tokens, everything like this, but not the anonymity part, right? So when really bridging, blockchain with real world assets, there's a level of compliance, right? So that's probably one of the most important aspect, right? That we look at on a day-to-day basis. And so you can have the benefits, but you can't have the anonymity, right? So we get those questions quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're dealing with tokenization of assets, most likely you're going to be dealing with some type of compliance, regulatory aspect. And to your point, it sounds like the area that you're in, it's like you said, it's what's happening. It's a recipe that's brewing right now, where you have real estate that's going in the right direction, and also crypto adoption, and then there's a little bit more regulatory clarity in that part of the world, and I can see where that could, create a nice hub for what you're building. So
Yeah. And I mentioned last
thanks so
night,
much, Kevin. Where can people?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I mentioned also last night, I was like, some news came out that Thailand just announced a $1 billion tax break on all investment tokens. And, that kind of, it's those type of news, with tokenization, Singapore has very strong compliance, consumer protection laws. Thailand's, right there with it. You've got a few other regions, Indonesia, Vietnam, that are all now progressing, right? And I think, yeah, it's nice having those type of things behind you when you're building, a kind of a disruptive platform. So that's always been good. And so we'll hope that stays the way for the next few years.
Let's hope so. And where can people follow along and learn more?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, hop into our website, take a look at all of our documentation, check out the app, go into our channels. I would say the best place to get in is really in our Telegram channels. There's, we have a pretty vibrant community right now. So not only, are we talking about PropBase, where, there's conversations, there's RWA, what we call real world, like, aficionados, right, who are in there. They're sending articles, so it's like an educative and informative experience. So I think we've got, anywhere from a few hundred comments a day, people asking questions, talking about things, and so that's probably the most fun place right now for us. And then we've got discords and everything like that as well. But we do a lot of AMAs, and these could be with other tokenization platforms just around the world. I'm very well networked into, I guess you could say, the FIBRE organization, which is Real Estate and Blockchain a Foundation. So I represent the Thailand region, and we're always doing lots of activity through AMAs, and they could just be, myself with a few other tokenization platforms around the world, all talking about how they're implementing their own strategies. Because the way that this is going to evolve is each region, each platform will develop its own value added proposition, right? Unique to its specific market and where it's located and who it's catering to. And so hearing from, different platforms and how they're implementing their strategy kind of allows for this perfect recipe of people who are really trying to innovate the space come together. And I think naturally, like, what I've experienced is there's some, a lot of my closer friends, they're building similar type platforms in other countries throughout the world. And it's just kind of brought in, I guess, a pretty cool group of entrepreneurs, and they're quite progressive, right? And so you also have a pretty good level of transparency with a lot of platforms out there who are tackling the same issues. So I think the community of real estate tokenization and platforms out there, whether they're tokenizing the underlying physical asset or yield associated with it, or combining some NFT strategy behind it, it's just good platforms, right? And I think I can see a lot of these guys, they're coming from the Web 2 space, just very similar to myself. And so they're coming in, they're bringing, maybe a new level of professionalism. And I think communities kind of dig that. So it's kind of cool to see, specifically in the Web3 space, right? And I think that's kind of going to be, hopefully RWA platforms out there will be, not, if not, one of the dominant narratives, one of the strongest narratives in the crypto and blockchain communities, specifically for this next bull run. So.
One of the best conversations I had on Twitter Space was the one where I hosted with you and Binary X, I believe, and a few other folks that were in the space. It was extremely engaging. Everybody had something to say, add, or even ask, because, like, to your point, it was a really good environment where people were just asking questions and learning from each other, because there's just so much that we still need to learn about this specific industry. So, Kevin, this was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for all your insights, for just tokenization as a whole, and giving us a little tidbit about PropBase. Thanks so much. Any parting words for the listeners?
No, it's great. Yeah, come check out our community, check out our channels. I'm available anytime if anyone wants to talk with me. We're looking, to always up our marketing game. So if people are here, they can provide some solutions. We're always looking to do more activities, more marketing, more AMAs. We think that's what makes us, become stronger and better. And, obviously if anyone's thinking about doing the same thing, reach out and, we can share some ideas.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Yep.